Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so very much for being with us here on this beautiful Tuesday afternoon. I know with us, we had a snowstorm today, but it stopped. That's okay. Other places, the snow is still snowing. But you know what? We can dream about adventure. We can dream about travel. So we're so excited to be with a special guest again, Cara Mathews from Quark Expeditions. And I just wanted to mention this is Speak Up and Empower with Real Talk Travel. And Speak Up and Empower is an online membership made up of all people from different parts of the world, a community that they're amazing experts in their field. And they've all got something worthwhile to speak about. And I'm with Real Talk Travel, and I'm so excited that we're going to have another beautiful adventure. And you guys are going to be blown away by this beautiful terrain that you're going to see today that Cara is going to share with us. So Cara, welcome. And where is our adventure going to take us today?
Thank you so much for having me. It's so great to be with you and to talk today about an incredible area, the Canadian Arctic. We're a US-based company, Quark Expeditions, but I'm actually located in Toronto, Ontario, Canada. And I have a blistering snowy day here today. And I am just loving it because it so inspires me about traveling to the polar regions. And so I took some time out today to walk around in the snow and hear it crunch beneath my feet. And it reminded me a little bit of traveling to the polar regions with Quark Expeditions. So I'm excited to take you on a journey today to share a little bit about the beauty and the history of the Canadian Arctic. It's just this adventure is awaiting a lot of people, and it's not on a lot of people's list. That's so great because I like when you and I have chatted in the past where some people just don't know what these areas hold, that, you know, the Arctic is so vast and they don't know what's there to explore and see. So I really encourage people to get to know these regions because I really do think people will be inspired to not only travel there, but be inspired on their journeys in these regions. So the Canadian High Arctic is so vast, but before I get into it, again, my name is Cara Mathews. I've been with Quark Expeditions for over 12 years now. So I'm here to help Susan with all of your polar questions when you're booking with Susan, because Susan and I are quite great partners, but we're here to help you. So I've been to Greenland and Antarctica and Spitsbergen and even the North Pole at 90 degrees north. And that's one of the reasons why people travel with Quark Expeditions. So why Quark? Some of you may not have heard of us before, and that's okay. We're been around for 3 decades, though. So we only do polar travel. We only travel to the Arctic and Antarctica. We don't go anywhere else in the world. And so that's a really big reason why a lot of travelers come with us. So a lot of guests come with Quark Expeditions because we only do polar. We were the first company to take passengers to the North Pole in 1991, which is still a trip we do today. And we were also the first company to fully circumnavigate Antarctica, the 5th largest continent, with guests as well. So it's just a couple of things that you can know that when you're coming with Quark, we really are the leaders in polar travel.
And the views are spectacular from what I've seen.
Yes, they are. And you know, I'm glad you brought that up too, Susan, because I sometimes talk a lot about communities that we visit in the Arctic or wildlife, but the scenery is just spectacular in these regions as well. Rugged coastlines, beautiful fjords, glaciers. But the Arctic is so vast. So it does include, you know, the North Pole, as we discussed, but also Spitsbergen off the coast of Norway, to see the polar bears. So Spitsbergen is a main island of an archipelago of islands off the coast of Norway. So it is a Norwegian archipelago. But what people don't realize is that it even encompasses Iceland and Greenland and even Russian high Arctic areas. About 4 million people live north of the Arctic Circle at 66 degrees north, typically in small communities, so including Canada. But Greenland, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Russia, which we mentioned too, Sweden, and the United States with Alaska. But the most popular destinations among Arctic travelers, so if you are thinking of traveling to these regions, one of the most popular destinations is the Canadian Arctic, Greenland, and Spitsbergen. I think a lot of people know the Canadian Arctic from, remember, Susan, when Franklin's shipwreck was found? And CBC a few years back did a lot of
Yes.
really great coverage of
Mhm.
finding the explorer ship.
Yeah.
And I think that piqued a lot of people's interests, historians, a lot of people who love to learn on their trips, because there's huge educational components to every Quark Expeditions voyage. So we have historians, glaciologists, biologists, glaciologists. And so it's a big educational component. So I love that our historian always brings to life polar history. And I used to think it was so boring and very dry. Now, working for a company that brings travelers to these regions and hearing the historians bring these stories to life of these explorers and what they've gone through and what they went through, is just so exciting. Like I
totally agree with you. It's like walking in their footsteps, and then you could actually see with your own eyes what they saw. Absolutely amazing. Really appreciate what they had to go through.
Yeah, I appreciate what they went through. Indeed, that is indeed. And you know, with the Arctic, there really is no better time to travel there and see those footsteps of those explorers that you're talking about, and traveling in the footsteps of them. Because not only do we travel to every key destination in the Arctic, but we've been developing greater variety of innovative itineraries and ways to explore. So that if you have a schedule that's not, you can't go away for a very long time, you can still have a great trip for 9 days in the Arctic. Or if you want to go away for longer, there's 17-day trips too. So that's what I love about some of our itineraries now, is you don't have to go for a long period of time. So what I want to talk to you specifically about with the Arctic is the Canadian Arctic. So areas like Baffin Island, Ellesmere Island, Axel Heiberg, just beautiful parts of the Arctic in Canada. And I just love Canada so much, because from east to west to north, it's all so vast and so very different. But with the Arctic, think of our North American summer. And so we are traveling to the Arctic in our summer. So from the end of April, beginning of May, all the way through to the beginning of October, end of September. So it's a really big season. And we tend to travel in Canada in August and September. So when the ice is broken up enough from the summer, from the warm summer. And this is a great time to explore and maneuver with a small ship in these areas. So all of our ships are under 200 passengers. And I'll talk a little bit about the ship, the ultramarine, because what's neat about a vessel, even if you're not a cruiser, definitely share with Susan your thoughts when you're watching this, if you're a cruiser or not. Because if you're a cruiser, you'll love cruising these destinations in the fjords. If you're not a cruiser, not to worry at all, because we spend a lot of our time off the ship. We're getting off the ship as much as possible. So even though that the ship is the home base, it's great to go off and explore and then come back to a great cabin, an outside cabin. So let's explore the Canadian Arctic. So the Canadian Arctic, a lot of people ask me, why would I want to go there? Is there anything to see? And if you're wanting to experience the vastness and purity of glacier-topped mountains and jagged coastlines, majestic wildlife, I really suggest you putting the Canadian High Arctic on your list of places to visit. I'll put it on your bucket list. It's home to thriving ecosystems. The Northwest Passage, which we were talking about earlier, offers plenty of opportunities to glimpse a lot of Arctic wildlife, but then visit some Canadian communities. A lot of communities are in the Arctic Circle. And then, of course, dig into the history of polar explorers. I just love the fact, too, with the Canadian Arctic, we can explore further and farther because we have helicopters that are included with the price of the voyage. So you can fly and see aerial views of these regions.
I like the fact that you can walk out, but then you can be above and see the surrounding area, that you wouldn't be able to get that concept unless you were above it. And that's amazing that you provide that helicopter rides there with your trip there. Amazing.
Yeah. And, you know, you hit the nail on the head with following in the footsteps of legendary explorers. And that is why a lot of you who are watching today might want to travel there, because those seeking new experiences, really, this is a place to explore. When I'm there with Quark Expeditions, I just can't believe what these explorers went through, and being the first person to go in these areas and navigate some of these waters and ice areas. And so I just can't believe the history and the outposts that we can go to, trapping huts that people will see. It's just wonderful. And then also the fjords, like look at the mountain ranges. And that's just to give you a little scale with that trapping hut there, of how beautiful these mountaintops are.
I just think it's so serene. Like it's just got such a serenity. It's bleak but serene. So
serene's a perfect word for it, because it is so blissful and peaceful. People who are really wanting to get away from it all, getting in the heart of nature. Serene is actually a really great word. I'm going to steal that from you, Susan. I'm going to start using that word. Yeah. And you just feel centered when you hear the word serene. And that's what I love too, is not only going off the ship as much as possible, minimum of 2 times a day, the expedition guides, when we're on the landings, I love hearing them share what their knowledge is about the certain area in which we are in, and really putting our minds and hearts back into what the early explorers were experiencing. And moments, speaking of serene and serenity, the moments of being by yourself in these remote areas of the Arctic are just so wonderful, because we're able to go off and sit on your own for a little bit in a safe environment that's watched by the expedition team, because there are polar bears in this area, which I'll get to in a moment. But it's nice just to sit on a rock and just reflect where we are in some of these most beautiful remote places of the planet.
I'm just going to say that this is a great area to have your own little retreat. Because I was thinking people go away for retreats to rejuvenate and find themselves, ground themselves, I guess you could say. But here would be a perfect place to be able to do that and come back and totally rejuvenated.
Yes. I love it. Yeah, retreat. Bring your journal and I love it. And we do have yoga and stuff too on board, so you can make it a full round retreat for sure. I love it. But when we ask most guests, for their opinion of the most important exploration of the Arctic and what it would be, that Franklin's Erebus and Terror in 1848 is really on top of people's list. So Beechey Island is a destination we go to on a lot of our trips in the Arctic. And it's not an island, actually, which I didn't know until just recently. It's actually located on an island called Devon Island. And it's one of the possible landing sites on a lot of itineraries for Quark. But it's best known for containing these 3 graves that we're seeing there in that picture, Susan. And it's actually Franklin's expedition members, which were discovered in 1850, so a couple years later from the expedition, by searchers for the lost Franklin expedition. So the searchers found a large stone cairn, and with the statues there. Mm-hmm. So it's the crewmen. I just find this so incredible. But there is no written record, though, of where Franklin planned to sail the next season. Okay. Or the last landing for the ships before the ships actually disappeared. But these are where the 3 graves of 3 of his expedition members are. And, I have to tell you, our expedition team, some of them have been working with us for, over, 20 years. And when we see guests that are such history buffs, literally kneeling and weeping and getting so emotional when they actually see historical sites like this, it's really moving to see people who are really interested in this type of history.
And this is why travel can do so much. It can impact a person, right? So
yeah, it really does. Yeah, it really does impact and transforms. And I love your word too that you use for these talks, the empowering, such an empowering experience and impactful. Another area, though, is really neat because I love the Hudson's Bay Company.
Oh, okay.
And, there's abandoned outposts.
Look at that. Pretty cool.
So that's one. So this is Port Leopold. So this is an important site in the fur trade history. So it's on the northeast side of this area called Somerset Island. And it's great because there's lots of artifacts and whale bones and such. I just love this as part of the Canadian history with Hudson's Bay Company. Whenever I see those blankets, and now that I see pictures of Port Leopold, I always connect them. And so it's just a really exciting, fun fact to go and see this history so far in the north on Somerset Island.
Yeah, it's amazing.
And I'll talk about beluga whales later on when I talk about wildlife. But this area too of Somerset Island is home to a lot of beluga whales. So going in early August, there's a little inlet called the Cunningham Inlet in areas. So there's a great chance of seeing a lot of beluga whales on this trip, on these parts of the Arctic as well.
Now, in that area, can you kayak with the beluga whales?
Yes, great question. So we do have kayaking offered as an additional adventure option. And there's actual full sea kayaking program with a real sea kayak or an inflatable kayak for one time only for a couple hours. And you're absolutely right. They're such friendly creatures that the paddlers get that intimate, up close experience sometimes with beluga whales.
It would be a totally amazing experience. And kids, what is it, age 8 and up that could go on this activity? So
exactly.
I'm thinking of kids being able to be on that kayak, to be able to see those beluga whales would be really amazing. It would stay with them the rest of their life.
And I can remember too in high school and even in grade 5, like learning a little bit of Canadian history. And what way to teach our children or our nieces and nephews or our grandchildren the history of the Canadian Arctic with showing it and going to these regions. What a way to learn history, because sometimes in textbooks it just was all very dry for me until things started to really come to life.
Just looking at this picture, Cara, when you said the Hudson Bay Company has red on their blanket, and then it has that yellow. To me, that yellow comes out in that picture that corresponds to their blanket and their logo that they use.
Oh, yeah, that's a really good point.
So
I love that.
It was just like, wow, that's
what. Yeah, I love that. And so Devon Island, fun fact, everyone who's watching, this is a fun party. If you're doing a virtual online gathering during these times, a fun party question is the fact that, what is the largest uninhabited island in the world? And that's Devon Island. So Devon Island in the Canadian Arctic is the largest uninhabited island on the planet, right here in Canada.
Hey, we should be honored.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah. That's great.
So there's lots of possible landing sites on Devon Island. And again, I love the scenery. The landscapes are just so beautiful. And those are actually blue whale bones on the top there. And so the whale bones, some of them get washed up on shore or get moved with the ice and the glaciers. And so possible some whale sightings too of the blue whale as well in these regions. But that's why I love talking not only about the history, but the wildlife is a very commonly asked question, Susan, that I get asked a lot is what wildlife will I see there? And so, before I start walking through the various species that we're on the lookout for, because our expedition team, more than any other operator, we do this so well, is we're on the bridge 24/7, and the expedition team signs up. So for 30-minute or 1-hour shifts, even throughout the night, because we gently, with it being the land of the midnight sun in the summer, in August, we encourage people to come out on deck if we see something in the middle of the night. And so we're always on the lookout for wildlife. And that is part of the excitement of the expedition. So when some people hear expedition, Susan, I get this all the time too, is, oh, I think it's too out of the box for me. I think it's too active. I think it's roughing it. I don't think it's really for me. I'm scared of expedition. When really what we mean by the word expedition is truly that every day and every morning or afternoon is expect the unexpected. That really is the expedition. There's great food on board, great beds and amenities, but really we're at the mercy of the weather and nature. And when we're seeing something in the distance like whales, we might not go on a particular landing site if there is a pod of whales that we're seeing for a couple of hours, like fin whales, for instance, in the Arctic. And we'll just enjoy and see it from the comfort of the vessel, because the ship really is one of the best viewing platforms for scenery.
That sounds good to me. To me, expedition is like explore, to open your eyes to new horizons, to new scenery, and just drink it all in.
That is so true. Yes, absolutely. I love it. And there's not only the beluga whales, those canaries of the sea, they're known as, which they're just beautiful creatures, but also the bow-headed whales. Bowheads are seen in places off of Baffin Island in this area called Isabella Bay. So
Okay.
Baffin Island is just beautiful. If you only go to Baffin Island, that is enough of the Canadian Arctic. It is spectacular. So even not going up as far north as Devon Island and Axel Heiberg and other areas, just so known for bow-headed whales, but also narwhals. Narwhals are the only whales to inhabit Arctic waters all year round.
Wow. Okay.
So, a lot of people ask, can I see a narwhal on this trip? And narwhals are very skittish. So they're the ones with, I should have brought a picture on this one, but they're the ones with the tusk.
Yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And they're very skittish. They know that they've been hunted for a long time, thousands of years. And so they are very skittish. So they hear the engine of either, the Zodiacs or the ship itself. So what we tend to do is, again, like what we do on landings, and sit in stillness and just really take in, like you were saying, the retreat kind of feel, Susan. We tend to shut off the engines of the Zodiac.
Make it quiet.
Moments of silence and solitude and quietness, that's serene.
Yes.
Again. And we just sit there. And sometimes, sure enough, sitting there for about 10 minutes, you'll be surprised what ends up greeting us and by the Zodiacs or in the near distance. I really love how our expedition team gently quiet people. And it's really interesting too, because sometimes 5 minutes in, I'm like, oh, surely someone's Velcro from their Quark Expeditions yellow parka is going to start making a sound. But it's amazing how many people actually quiet themselves to just take it all in and wait for something unexpected to happen.
The anticipation.
Yeah. And then, of course, one of my favorite mammals is the polar bear. And I think this is on a lot of people's lists to see the polar bear. And there's approximately 24,000 on average polar bears in the Arctic. So the largest draw to the Canadian Arctic does tend to be the polar bear as well. I know a lot of people like to go to Churchill in Manitoba to see the polar bears there. But going farther into the Canadian Arctic, going farther north, great opportunities seeing them out on the sea ice and hunting or on land. It's just a great way to see the polar bear.
Well, they're in their element up there for sure.
Yeah. And, they're the largest living land carnivore on Earth. And what's neat is they have webbed feet. So the polar bears have this webbed feet. If you take a look at their paws, and it's an adaptation from them swimming. Yeah. So it's very common for us to see one swimming or getting onto an iceberg. And so the webbed feet helps them swim because it's an adaptation of them becoming marine mammals.
Yes.
So it's really neat. And all of our trips too have photography programs. So I'm not a photographer, but I sure like getting to be friends with the photographer on board to get some of their pictures, or other guests on board. We have a photographic journal,
Yeah,
so people share their photos, and then everyone gets a copy of the photographic journal at the end of the trip too. Because certainly
safe
there were some,
people.
yeah, because there were some experiences that I had that the wildlife, it can be close to the ship, but then other times you do need your binoculars. So people with a longer lens and the photographers that really enjoy that type of thing were able to get some great shots like this with the two polar bears. For those photographers out there that are,
And if you aren't a photographer, you could probably still get some good shots, that
yeah.
being on this expedition. Yes.
Exactly. One of our, we have a photographer on every voyage, is a part of the expedition team. And, Susan, I even learned how to take better pictures with my phone from the photographer on board. So you're absolutely right. Like from the comfort of the Zodiac, I took fantastic pictures with my phone. And it was neat too, because there's the midnight sun, 24 hours of daylight for most of the time that we're in the Arctic, a lot of the time. In September, the sun usually sets around 9 or 10 p.m. at night. But he taught me how, our particular photographer taught me how to take a picture of the sun as the subject. And I thought, subject? I didn't know. I had a little photography lesson. And it was just so beautiful using the sun and a little bit of the fog. We say fog is the F word, Susan, on our trip.
Okay.
So then the fog rolls in, and sometimes we can't do a landing because we can't see the polar bears. So sometimes the fog makes us stay on board or do a Zodiac cruise instead of a landing. But it was fog is sometimes great for photos, that light.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah.
But I love Arctic hares and Arctic foxes, like so cute. Tell me if those aren't cute.
They are cute. I could cuddle it.
I mean, I gotta confess, we have a polar boutique on board, and I bought a little fox, a stuffed animal, an Arctic fox stuffed animal, because I just loved it. And then walrus, you can smell the walrus before you can see the walrus. That is for sure.
Wow.
So it's really neat seeing them out on the sea ice. But also, in addition, we have the muskox can also be seen here. We talked about them for the Greenland when we were discussing Greenland. But muskoxen are also seen in the Canadian high Arctic as well. And numerous species of seals pop their heads out of the water a lot, or get on an iceberg too. So lots of wildlife in the Canadian Arctic.
Great learning process for all the new wildlife.
And I think community visits are a highlight. I mean, Antarctica is so different because no one's inhabited Antarctica. Now there's just, there's researchers and scientists and stuff. But what I love about the Arctic, it's been inhabited for, almost 3,000 years with people. So it's just incredible that we can go to areas like Arctic Bay in Baffin Island, Grise Fjord in Arctic Bay, so both of those areas. And I just like meeting the locals and connecting with the locals and hearing about their stories and the elders. So we ask that our guests, conduct themselves with curiosity. So if you're watching and you want to really explore some of the Canadian Arctic communities, people just come with the willingness to learn about these amazing communities. We learn about not only their food, their culture, and their practices. So it's a fantastic experience.
I wouldn't try. I would ask questions.
That's amazing. And would you try the seal if you had someone offer you a little bit of seal?
I've never tried it, so yes, I'd be curious to find out what it would taste like. Yes,
because I did turn it down. I tried a little bit of muskoxen, but okay, Susan, you're going to make me brave enough to try it next time, because it's a big source of protein and so many vitamins for these communities. So these two wonderful women, these are actually throat singers. And so we bring some of the community members on board, and then we also go and visit in their communities to show us around. And so I loved hearing some of the music from these communities. So there's not only traditional Inuit art, and I bought a little walrus stone sculpture to support some of the communities and the great artists. But there's also lots of hiking and kayaking and zodiac cruising too, in addition to these community visits. Sam Ford Fjord is an area that we explore in Baffin Island, and it's just stunning in addition to the community visits. So wildlife, communities, history, it's just incredible. And people also can visit the famous fossil forest. So in the Arctic, in the Canadian Arctic, it's Axel Heiberg Island. So it's Canada's second most northerly island. So I'll show that map to you in a moment. I just find this stuff so fascinating.
Very interesting. Yes, I'm ready to go.
Yeah. So again, the best time to travel in the Canadian Arctic is August and September. So the weather isn't as bad as people think it is. You know, it can get up to, +5, +7. If there's no wind and the sun's shining, it's not as cold as people think it is. And to be honest with you, sometimes in August, Southern Ontario summers can be quite warm in other parts of Canada. So why not take a week and go to the Arctic for a little bit of a break?
Yeah.
So I did just want to mention, I love maps. So that's why, Susan, I just wanted to share a few more maps just to put some of these areas into context. So there's that big Devon Island that we were mentioning with some of those spots like Beachy Island. And then Arctic Bay. So that's one of the communities on Baffin Island, just to get an idea of where we're talking about, where some of these pictures are. So as little as 9 days, because day 1 is in Toronto and day 9 is in Toronto. So 7 nights on board the ship. So great getaway for a week summer vacation.
And then people can put a deposit down and then pay X amount of, pay it off before, like so many.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's just a low deposit of 10%. And right now too, it's fully refundable with, we've got great safe protocols in place. So if someone's booking an Arctic trip this summer and something happens and we cancel the trip, or if someone just, doesn't want to travel, they don't feel confident yet or comfortable, there's so many flexible options that you and I can help them with, Susan. So anyone that's on the line, there's no better time to book a trip than now because of so many possibilities of getting refunded or switching your trip over or canceling for any reason up to 24 hours prior to the departure.
That's good to know. Yes, thank you.
And there's also Canadian dollars too, which helps, because I remember I booked a trip to Africa a few years back and it was in US dollars. And, being a Canadian citizen, that really, ouch, it hurt a little bit. So we do have Canadian pricing now, which is exciting.
That is exciting, yes.
And so Axel Heiberg, this was one of the islands that I was just talking about, that far north island, that northerly island, Ellesmere Island. These places are truly, Susan, like no other place on the planet. You actually feel like you're not on Earth anymore. Some of these areas even remind me a little bit of Mars, and just truly transformative, just feeling like you're not even on this planet. It's just so vast, unlike any other place on Earth.
So totally different pictures.
And I mean, these are full Northwest Passage voyages and trips. We did have trips that were 30 days, but from a lot of guest feedback, a lot of people just didn't want to go away for that long or be on a ship for that long, even though we're getting off the ship as much as possible. So there are great 17-day trips now with highlights of the Northwest Passage. So West Greenland, as well as going over to the Canadian Arctic, with stops like Beachy Island. So that's a great option. And I love it because there's no sea days. Like they're every morning and afternoon, and then during the evening we'll reposition the ship. So that itinerary is great for people who get seasick and they don't want to do seasickness. These types of itineraries are perfect.
That's awesome.
Whereas this one that explores Baffin Island, highly recommend this itinerary too, in the footsteps of Franklin. But this one does have that sea day. See that between Greenland and Baffin Island, that Davis Strait there.
Right.
this one does have that sea day, so it takes about a day, day and a half to cross that area. So that's generally at the beginning of the trip. So we'll fly up to Kangerlussuaq from Toronto. Again, all of these depart and come back to Toronto. So if you're in Vancouver, or you're in Guelph, or you're in London, Ontario, or you're in Kingston, you just come right to Toronto, and all of these trips depart and come back to Toronto, which is really great. So you do need your passport, just if you do some of the Greenland trips, and also just your passport's great to have on board the ship. So essentially, people are getting into their own little bubbles with these trips, which is why they're becoming really popular even this summer. Because in the hotel, and then we have a charter flight, so everyone's together, and then we go on the ship together, and then we fly back together. So it's a great way of having a little bit of a bubble, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought too, I just chatted again about a little bit about the onboard experience. So the Ultramarine is the vessel that we're using for these itineraries. And Susan, I did mention this last time with the Greenland webinar, but I just thought, I wanted to share with all of your viewers today, again, the Ultramarine, because in these areas of the Canadian Arctic, we can go further and farther than any other company with this ship, because we have 2 helicopters where the heli sightseeing is included and heli landings for the Canadian itineraries. And so we really can go further and farther. This purpose-built ship is set to sail in a couple of months, actually. We're doing sea trials with her in Croatia. So very exciting.
Yeah, that would be exciting too. Yeah.
And so she's not only got 2 helicopter pads, but 20 quick Zodiac launching sites, and then superior comfort with the cabins as well. So it's really a game changer in polar travel. And she is a purpose-built expedition vessel for the polar regions for us. So we're excited to have her in our fleet.
She's beautiful.
It's just great. And there, to your retreat, there's the wellness kind of center with the spa and the gym. So if someone does want to create their own little retreat, like you were saying, they can.
Mm-hmm.
And how about doing the polar plunge in around minus 1 degree Celsius water, and then coming back and warming up in the sauna?
I did see that. I was like, oh, I wonder if I'd try that. But you got to try something once at least.
Yeah. Exactly. And then there's 3 restaurants on board. Great food, just because this is expedition. I know some of you are probably wondering, does this mean that the food isn't great? And the food is excellent. I loved sitting in the lounges and the bars after landing, sharing stories and pictures with other passengers. And it's just a fun atmosphere in the evenings to gather for some of the bar talks that the expedition team members share stories of their travels. And some of maybe the research of their professors, some of the research that they've done in the past. It's a really fun gathering areas on board. And even to have your moments of solitude and not be in your cabin.
There you go. Oh, yeah.
So the food is spectacular. So there's seated, plated meals, breakfast, lunches, and dinners. Snack, you'll never go hungry. They're great snacks. I got used to, 4:30 scones with clotted cream, or, just there's such great food on board all around the clock. And that, being a little bit of a chillier vacation, I tend to build up my bigger appetite. And so the food is just phenomenal. And beer and wine is included with dinner. So more often than not, the amazing crew members, one of the dining team will top up a glass of wine for you and take it back to either your cabin or go to the educational program.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, good to know.
So our internationally trained chefs do oversee a menu that changes daily. So you'll always have variety. And lots of dietary preferences too.
Oh, that's good. And they're probably using food that's local too, right?
Exactly. I'll talk about sustainability before I wrap up, because you're right. We try and get support to communities and sourcing local ingredients. And even, for instance, even beer, we try and get to support some of the local craft breweries and such in some of the areas in which we travel to.
Mm-hmm. That's good. Yes.
So we not only have, the chef prepared meals, we have a polar library. So if someone wants to research a little bit more of the polar history or an animal that they saw, we have the exercise room. But what I love is the expedition team. So on board, our expedition team are sitting with everyone during dinners and lunches. And I feel like that's a real highlight for people. Like the expedition team, they don't just go away and you only see them on a landing or during a talk. And that's what I really love about our expedition team. But at the end of every day, we recap what we've seen. So all the expedition team gather. And if we've seen a polar bear, then the polar bear specialist chats. Or if we've seen a really neat glacier, then the glaciologist will share. So I love the recaps. And then usually the expedition leader ends the recap before dinner and shares a little bit about what you might see the next day.
That's good. Education is good.
Yeah. Because, sometimes, weather changes and itineraries change along the way. So it's neat to have a little recap of what you've seen that day and then also what's in store for the next day. And onboard learning never stops. One of the biggest differentiators between Quark and a lot of the other operators that go to these regions is we have a ratio of one expedition team member to 7 guests. And so this enables us for the onboard learning to constantly happen too. So if we're out on deck observing polar bear sighting, that's what happened with me and learning about the webbed feet of the polar bear, is our polar bear specialist came around and was whispering to everyone and sharing information about what we were seeing, and that maybe it was a male bear hunting seal. So I love the learning never stops. I just love it. If you want to learn more, you can ask questions. If you don't and you just want to hear some tips, great. But the wildlife and nature viewing from the onboard experience is incredible. I just love the opportunities that the ship, as a platform, has for great wildlife encounters. So we always encourage everyone to get out on board, on deck.
No obstructions there, so that's good.
Exactly. But just what separates Quark Expeditions still from the rest is our adventure options. We have more adventure options in the polar regions than any other operator. So a lot is included, Susan. So it's just amazing that the heli sightseeing is included, Zodiac cruising, hiking, that infamous polar plunge, photography programs, so much is included. But then, if people do want to do private kayaking, well, not private, but there's small groups of only 10 people, and so really intimate experiences. There's also paid adventure options. So just make sure that if you're calling Susan to inquire about a trip and you're really interested in paddling, the spots go quite quickly because they're small groups.
Yeah.
So definitely inquire about that. So our expedition team, this is one of the reasons why I've been with this company for over 12 years. The hospitality of the expedition team is outstanding. They are it's just incredible. They are on board. They're polar passionate. They actually make me want to be a better person day to day and live my life even better. They're just so inspiring. Like I just want to soak up their energy and their passion for life in the polar regions. They're all polar passionate, but we also have a Quark Academy program. So if you're worried about safety, we launched it in 2017, an actual Polar Academy, Quark Academy program where everyone, even if they've worked for previous companies, they still come through our training program. So we have a standard of excellence for safety.
That's good. Mm-hmm.
So these are definitely unscripted and spontaneous adventures. So this is just pack your sense of adventure when traveling to the Canadian Arctic or anywhere in the polar regions. It's just an incredible memories that will last a lifetime for all ages, from like you were saying, Susan, from 8. I traveled with an 86-year-old and a 99-year-old. The 99-year-old loved walking. The 86-year-old that I was with didn't get off the ship once. So it's for all activity levels and all ages. We do have the most comprehensive sustainability strategy in the polar regions. We really believe that people will come back changed and become polar ambassadors. So I just love the guests on board when they come back and want to do one thing in their own communities to help help the planet, especially when they're seeing these really remote regions. I really do feel like those of you who are watching and you travel to these remote locations of the planet, you do come back changed. And I love that we have a fantastic polar ambassador program when people come back, among many other things. We've eliminated single-use plastics. We've reduced ship emissions by 10%. So by 28%. So just a lot of things that we're doing, and also communities, sustainability. A big thing is supporting communities and going into communities and knowing what and partnering with these areas. So sustainability is really part of our DNA.
That's awesome.
And a lot of you are probably wondering about COVID, the elephant in the room. But as the recognized leader in polar adventures, I can assure you that we have spared no expense. So when you're booking with Susan a polar trip, we have developed a fantastic safe COVID policy, which cements our position as the leader in safe travel. SAFE, S-A-F-E, represents our 4-component approach that ensures guests are protected in every way before and during your polar trip with us. So if you're thinking about going this summer or you're hesitant, there's so many things that we're doing with testing benefits where you receive the results on board within 30 to 60 minutes. So it's state-of-the-art testing. We're also ensuring all guests get a negative COVID test before boarding the ships. So there's a lot that we're doing. So if you have more questions for Susan, please reach out and I can help her answer those for you, because we have a very comprehensive plan. And anytime cancellation and rebooking, like I already mentioned, or anytime cancellation and rebooking enables you to rebook with Susan for any reason 30 days prior to their voyage, even on the day of embarkation.
They can't go wrong then, booking.
So this has been great. I know there's just so much to talk about, Susan, in the Canadian alone.
Oh, it's totally amazing. I don't know about you, but I'm just ready to go book right now myself. So who's going to join me? So, Cara, that was absolutely wonderful. We really appreciate, because there's those uncharted waters, there's the uncharted land that people think that, oh, why would I go there? Well, you've just proven to us that it is absolutely stunning. It's amazing. And the experience that we can have with the historical sites, with the local communities, and the food to try, and their photography and their wildlife would be out of this world. You would never have any other picture that would be so unique as like in the Canadian North, that you could take it in and totally come back rejuvenated, a new person, empowered, impacted by what you saw and took in, and took the time to really navigate through those waters, so to speak, be in those explorers. So
yes.
Well, thank you so very much. I really appreciated that. I learned a lot myself. I definitely have more interest in wanting to go see those lands, the North, myself as well. But thank you again, and we really hope we can get you to come on again and talk about maybe Antarctica.
I would love that, and talk about some fun penguins in the bottom of the world, now that we've covered a lot of the top of the world.
Yeah.
And what's fun too, Susan, is if anyone has Netflix, there's that Frozen Planet series that's been on Netflix, BBC documentary, and it goes through all the seasons of the polar regions, from summer, fall, winter, and spring. And it's just a fun little thing. They're not very long episodes, so it's something to curl up with maybe on the weekend or something, if people want just something different to watch and get inspired by some wildlife.
I'll have to have a look at that. But thanks again. And it was great for the different ones to join us today. And you can see there's certainly hidden treasures in the world in different places that you really got to reach out beyond past the blinders. And you can see that you really be able to enjoy it. So we've had a comment saying great information, Cara and Susan, and thanks for doing this. So we really appreciate your feedback when you give us the feedback that you enjoy learning experiences like these, like myself. And we'll definitely have Cara on again, and we'll talk about Antarctica. So everybody, please be safe and healthy, and do what you can to do that social distancing, and let's carry on with the lockdown, even though it's hard. But don't stop dreaming about travel. You can dream and you can book, maybe not for tomorrow, but you can do it for the summer or even next year. And maybe this could be on your bucket list to see the Arctic there. So have a wonderful day, be safe, and we'll see you next Tuesday with an adventure that's waiting for you. So stay tuned. Take care. Thanks, Cara.